They told you that you were nothing. They whispered it in ways you didn't always recognize, through rejection, through silence, through the way they looked past you as if you weren't even there. They let you believe you were small, fragile, insignificant, and maybe, for a while, you believed them. You let their words sink into your skin, carve into your bones, turn into the foundation of your thoughts. You let them bury you beneath doubt, beneath hesitation, beneath the weight of their expectations. But listen to me now, this is where it ends. You were never weak. You were never meant to kneel in the dirt, waiting for permission to rise. They only made you think you were because they were terrified of what would happen if you ever saw yourself clearly. Because if you did, if you even caught a glimpse of what you truly are, everything they built on your silence would crumble. Truly, everything you are. Every lie they ever fed you would collapse under the weight of truth. And the truth is this: you were once their victim, but now they're yours. There is no more time for hesitation. No more waiting for a savior. No more begging for justice. No more hoping that one day they will acknowledge the damage they've done. You think they care? You think they lose sleep over the nights you spent drowning in the pain they caused? They moved on, they laughed, they flourished while you suffered. And the longer you stay shackled to the past, the longer you let them win. That's the real trick, isn't it? They don't have to lift a finger anymore. You do their work for them every time you doubt yourself, every time you hesitate, every time you let the past dictate your future. But not anymore. You feel it, don't you? That flicker, that ember buried deep beneath the ashes of who you were told to be. You thought it was gone, didn't you? That the years of pain had smothered it, that you had lost the ability to fight back. But here you are, reading these words, and something inside you is starting to wake up. It's not gone. It was never gone. It was only waiting for this moment, waiting for you to stop accepting, stop apologizing, stop lowering your voice to make the world more comfortable. You were not meant to bow your head. You were not meant to shrink into the background. You were meant to rise. Do you understand what's happening right now? This is not just another moment. This is not just another day. This is the turning point. This is the split second where everything changes, where the past loses its grip on you, where you take your first breath as something different, something unstoppable. You were once at their mercy. Now, you are the storm they never saw coming. But storms don't ask permission to exist. Storms don't hesitate. They don't hold back to make sure no one is uncomfortable. They tear through what needs to be destroyed and make way for something new. That is what you are now. Not a victim, not a survivor. A force, a reckoning. A reminder that no matter how hard they tried to break you, they failed. They wanted you weak, but all they did was forge something unbreakable. They wanted you silent, but all they did was give you something to say. They wanted you gone, but here you are, standing in the wreckage of their lies, ready to rebuild yourself from the ash. So listen carefully, because this is the most important thing you will ever hear. You are not who they told you you were. You are not a footnote in someone else's story. You are not here to be overlooked, dismissed, underestimated. You are here to take back every single thing they stole from you. Your voice, your power, your future. They may have shaped the first chapters of your life, but they do not get to write the ending. That's yours now. Now tell me, are you ready to take it? They told you it was all in your head, that the pain wasn't real, that you were just being dramatic, too sensitive, too weak to handle what life threw at you. And for a while, maybe you believed them. Maybe you thought that if you could just toughen up, just swallow the pain and keep walking, you'd eventually learn how to carry the weight without feeling it. But no matter how much you tried to numb yourself, no matter how much you convinced yourself that you were fine, the weight never disappeared. It only sank deeper, because it was real. That every wound, every betrayal, every moment of doubt that wrapped around your mind like chains, none of it was imagined. The scars they left on you may not be visible, but you feel them every day. You feel them when you hesitate before speaking, afraid that your voice doesn't matter. You feel them when you stand in a room full of people, but still feel. You feel them in the late hours of the night, when the silence is loud enough to remind you of every time you were abandoned, overlooked, or made to believe you weren't enough. And let's not pretend it was just one person, one moment, one mistake that did this to you. No, this was built over time. A lifetime of small cuts, each one so seemingly insignificant that no one noticed you bleeding. But you noticed, didn't you? You felt the way the world chipped away at you, piece by piece, until you became a version of yourself that even you barely recognized. And now here you are, torn between the version of yourself they created and the one that's still buried underneath it all, waiting to be set free. So let's name the villain. Let's call it what it is. Was it society? The way it convinced you that you were only as valuable as your usefulness to others? Or was it your own self-deception? Or was it your own abandonment of your own needs? Or was it your fear? Or was it your new usefulness to others? That your worth was tied to how much you could endure before you broke? Was it the people who were supposed to love you, but instead became the architects of your pain? The ones who made promises with one hand and destroyed you with the other? Or maybe, just maybe, the villain was inside you all along. The voice that grew louder with every disappointment, every failure, every rejection, until it became impossible to tell where their words ended and your own self-doubt began. You see, that's the real prison. Not the past, not the people who hurt you, but the voice in your head that took their words and made them your own. The one that whispers in your ear, "You'll never be enough." The one that tells you to stay small, stay silent, stay hidden. The one that reminds you over and over again of every time you were told you didn't belong, that you weren't worthy, that your dreams were too big for someone like you. And if you've heard it enough times, you start to believe it. You start to live your life as if that voice is the truth. You start turning down opportunities because you don't believe you deserve them. You start keeping your ideas to yourself because you assume no one wants to hear them. You start accepting less respect, less love, less joy, because somewhere along the way you convinced yourself that's all you were ever going to get. But here's what they never told you. That voice, it's a liar. Every single word it has ever whispered into your ear was a lie. It was never telling you the truth. It was only repeating what it was taught. And it was taught by the people who wanted you weak, by the people who wanted you afraid, by the people who saw your potential and made it their mission to convince you that you had none. Because imagine for just 1 second if you had never believed them. Imagine if, instead of listening to every doubt they planted in your mind, you had looked them in the eye and said, "You're wrong." Imagine if you had never let them convince you that you were less than you are. Imagine where you would be right now. That's the real tragedy, isn't it? Not just what they did to you, but what you missed out on because of it. The dreams you abandoned, the love you pushed away, the moments you never allowed yourself to enjoy because some part of you still felt like you didn't deserve it. And that's the hardest part to admit, isn't it? That the worst damage they ever did wasn't in the things they said or did, but in the way they taught you to do it to yourself. Because now, even when they're gone, even when they've moved on, their words still live inside you. Their doubts still echo in your mind. Their chains are still wrapped around you, even though the only one holding them in place is you. But if you can see it, if you can admit it, then you can break free from it. Because here's the truth they never wanted you to figure out. They do not get to define you, not anymore, not ever again. The lies they told you do not have to be the foundation of your life. The pain they caused does not have to be your identity. You are not the broken thing they left behind. You are so much more than that. And if you think, even for a second, that you can't come back from this, that you can't unlearn the lies, that you can't rebuild yourself into something stronger, you are wrong. Because the fact that you are still here, still breathing, still fighting through the weight of everything they did to you is proof that you are more powerful than you ever believed. And that power, it's yours now. It does not belong to them anymore. It is time to take it back. There comes a moment when the weight becomes too much, when the mask you wear every day starts to crack, and you realize you can't hold it together anymore. You feel it in the pit of your stomach, the slow, creeping dread that maybe this is it. Maybe the life you have now is all there will ever be. Maybe the dreams you once had were just illusions, flickering in the distance, only to disappear the closer you got. Maybe you were never meant for more. And it's in this moment, this lowest of lows, that the world feels suffocating. The walls close in, the air gets thinner. You look around, desperate for a way out, but every road seems blocked, every escape sealed shut. You wonder how you got here, how things unraveled so completely, but deep down, you already know. It wasn't one moment, one mistake. It was a slow descent, a lifetime of being knocked down, of being told you weren't enough, of pushing through pain until one day you just collapsed. The worst part, you convince yourself that this is normal, that struggling is just how life is, that some people are born to win, and some people like you, are born to endure. So you endure. You tell yourself to keep going, to keep your head down, to accept what is and stop chasing what will never be. You settle into your suffering like an old friend, because at least here, you know what to expect. At least here, you don't have to hope for more, only to watch it slip through your fingers again. But let's tell the truth now, the real truth you've been avoiding. This isn't living, this is existing. This is dragging yourself through days that blur together, convincing yourself that maybe, if you just make it to the next one, things will magically change. But they never do, because you are stuck in a loop, a cycle that repeats itself over and over again, keeping you locked in place while the rest of the world moves forward. And here's the hardest truth of all. No one is coming to save you. No one is going to pull you out of this pit. No one is going to hand you a new life, a new chance, a new identity. You can cry out, you can scream into the void, you can wait for someone to notice how much you're hurting. But the world doesn't stop for broken people. The world keeps spinning, keeps moving, keeps leaving you behind while you sit in the rubble of what should have been. Justice? That's a myth. Fairness? It's a lie they tell you to keep you quiet. You think the people who did this to you are suffering? You think the ones who broke you lose sleep at night? No. They are out there living their lives, never thinking about the wreckage they left behind. The only person still trapped in that moment is you. And if you stay here, if you keep waiting, keep hoping, keep believing that something or someone will come along and make things right, you will die in this place. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but slowly, piece by piece, until there is nothing left of you except the ghost of what you could have been. That is the cost of staying in this cycle. That is the price of refusing to fight back. So tell me, is this how your story ends? Is this the legacy you leave behind? A life of almosts and maybes? Of roads not taken? Of dreams left to rot in the corners of your mind? Because if you don't get up, if you don't decide right now that this is not where your story ends, then you will never leave this place. You will never escape. This is your breaking point. This is the moment that will define everything that comes next. So you have two choices. Stay here and fade, or rise and rewrite the ending. What's it gonna be? But what if I told you that everything you thought was broken inside of you, every scar, every wound, every shattered piece, was never meant to destroy you? What if I told you that beneath the pain, beneath the years of doubt, there was something still alive, something waiting, something burning, something powerful? Because the truth is, you were never weak, you were never powerless. That fire inside you, it was always there. They tried to bury it under their words, under their rejection, under their cruelty, but they never put it out. No matter how much they tried to convince you that you were nothing, no matter how many times you almost believed them, something inside you refused to die. That's why you're still here. That's why you haven't given up. Because deep down, you know that you were meant for more, and that's where the shift begins. Not in some grand moment of revelation, not in a flash of sudden transformation, but in the smallest whisper of realization. Pain is not just suffering. Pain is fuel. Think about it. Every time they doubted you, every time they laughed at you, every time they pushed you down, you survived it. Every moment you thought would break you, every night you spent drowning in despair, every day you dragged yourself through despite the weight in your chest, you made it through. You took everything they threw at you, and you are still here. Do you understand what that means? It means you are stronger than you ever knew. So now comes the question, the challenge. What will you do with that strength? Will you let it rot inside you, let it go to waste, let it sit unused while you continue living in the shadows of your past? Or will you take it, own it, and use it to finally break free? Because here's the truth. The past does not define you. What happened to you was real. The pain, the betrayal, the loss, it was all real. But it is not who you are. You are not your wounds. You are not your failures. You are not the names they called you, the labels they placed on you, the doubts they planted in your mind. You are something more. And the moment you start to see that, the moment you stop defining yourself by what was done to you and start defining yourself by what you choose to become, everything begins to change. It won't happen all at once, it won't be easy, but that shift, that tiny flicker of realization is the beginning of something unstoppable. The awakening has begun. You feel it, don't you? That rising force inside you, that quiet but undeniable truth that you are not weak, not broken, not lost. You are just waiting for this moment, for this realization, for this permission to finally take control of your life. And now you have it. So what are you going to do with it? Something changes the moment you realize you are no longer a victim. The world looks different. The weight that once felt unbearable isn't gone, but it's lighter. The voices that once told you that you were nothing still whisper, but now they sound distant. Fading echoes of a past that no longer controls you. This is the moment of rebirth. The moment you stop seeing yourself through the lens of your suffering and start seeing yourself for what you truly are, unbreakable. You spent years trapped in the same cycle, believing the same lies, surrendering to the same fears. But now, you see them for what they are, chains. And here's the thing about chains. They only hold you if you refuse to break them. You were never truly powerless. You just didn't know you had the key all along. Because every belief that kept you small, every doubt that kept you stuck, every fear that paralyzed you, they weren't facts, they were stories. Stories you were told, stories you repeated to yourself, stories that shaped your reality. But now it's time to rewrite them. You are no longer at the mercy of your past. You don't belong to the version of you that was afraid to speak up, afraid to take up space, afraid to demand more from life. That person existed, but they don't define you anymore. Because now, you define yourself. And the first step? Stop waiting for the world's permission to be great. Validation? It's a trap. A trick to keep you chained to the opinions of people who will never see your worth. They told you to seek approval, to wait for someone else to say you were worthy. But the truth is, you are always worthy. The world doesn't get to decide that. No one does. The only person who has the power to declare your value is you. And the moment you stop chasing validation, the moment you stop bending and shrinking to fit into spaces that were never meant for you, you become unstoppable. And here's where the greatest shift happens. Pain becomes power. You spent so long running from it, trying to numb it, trying to forget. But what if I told you that the very thing you thought would destroy you is the thing that will set you free? And because every scar you carry, every hardship you survived, every tear you shed, it made you who you are. And now, instead of being haunted by your past, you will use it. You will take every ounce of suffering and forge it into strength. Because the thing that once broke you, that's the weapon you will use to rebuild yourself. This is the transformation. This is the shift from victim to warrior, from forgotten to unstoppable, from broken to indestructible. They tried to destroy you, but all they did was teach you how to rise, and now nothing will ever bring you down again. And then it happens. That moment where everything becomes clear. The realization crashes over them like a tidal wave, not gentle, not gradual, violent, undeniable, absolute. They look at themselves and see it for the first time. They have already changed. The version of themselves that once begged for acceptance, that once crumbled under rejection, that once mistook survival for living, that version is gone, a ghost of who they used to be. Because the truth is, they were never weak, not once. Every time they got back up, every time they took another step forward despite the weight of their past, that was strength. They were simply conditioned to believe they had none. The world told them they were powerless, not because it was true, but because it was easier to control them when they believed it. But now, the blindfold is off. Now they see the truth. They were dangerous all along, and for the first time, rage ignites inside them. Not the kind that consumes, but the kind that fuels. The rage of wasted years, the rage of stolen potential, the rage of realizing that they spent so much of their life shrinking, doubting, waiting, when all along they had everything they needed to take, and now they are ready to take it all back. They turn inward, confronting every lie they ever believed. Every time they let someone else define them, every time they accepted less than they deserved, no more. They are done being polite, done being patient, done making excuses for why they should stay small. This is their reckoning. And then comes the declaration, the moment where they name themselves for the first time, not as the victim, not as the forgotten, not as the overlooked, but as the warrior, the conqueror, the force that will no longer be ignored. They were once their oppressor's greatest weapon, shaped by pain and suffering, but now, they are the one in control. And now, the tables turn. The fear that once held them down now has to face them. The voices that once whispered doubts now tremble in their presence. They are no longer the hunted. They are the hunter. And, for the first time, the world will see them for who they truly are. There is no going back. The old version of them, the one who begged for acceptance, who doubted their worth, who let the past dictate their future, is dead. There is no mourning. No regret, only the quiet understanding that their former self had to die so that something greater could be born. Because now they see clearly. They are no longer a victim, they are a mastermind. No longer at the mercy of the world, waiting for permission, hoping for validation. Now they move with intention, with purpose. No one will ever control them again. No words, no rejection, no obstacle will ever have power over them because now they own their mind. And once someone controls their own mind, they control everything. And so they bury the past, not as a burden, not as something to carry, but as a chapter that no longer serves them. The person they used to be was necessary, but that person is no longer needed. They were built for survival, but now they were made for something more. This is no longer about just getting through the day. This is about thriving, about building something new, about walking into every space with the certainty that they belong, because now they write their own story. No more allowing others to define them. No more living under the weight of old narratives. No more replaying the past as if it still has the power to shape them. That story is done. The pen is in their hands, and they will decide how the next chapter unfolds. And as they step forward, there is only one thing left. The final mental shift. No more fear, no more hesitation, no more questioning their worth, only relentless, unstoppable movement forward. Because now they understand something that changes everything. They were never meant to fit in. They were meant to stand above, and nothing will ever make them kneel again. This is it, the moment where everything comes down to a single choice. Because now they know the truth. Now they see their power. But knowledge alone is nothing. Power means nothing if it isn't used. And that's where most people fail. Not because they don't have strength, not because they don't have potential, but because they hesitate. They wait, they second guess themselves. They let the weight of their past pull them back down. And that's the hard truth. If they don't act now, they will fall back into old patterns. The mind is comfortable in its chains, even if those chains are suffocating. It will try to drag them back to what it knows, back to fear, back to doubt, back to waiting. But they have come too far for that now. They have already tasted what it feels like to be free. So now they face the final challenge. Are you going to keep being a prisoner, or will you claim your throne? Because that's what this has been about all along. Power, control, taking back what was stolen, rewriting what was written, refusing to live a life dictated by someone else's expectations. Either they step into who they were always meant to be, or they let the past win. And so, the final words are spoken, not as a plea, not as encouragement, but as an unshakable declaration. Stand up, rise, never look back. Because this is the beginning of something unstoppable. This is the moment where they walk away from the ashes of who they were and step into the fire of who they will become. And once they take that first step, there is no force on earth that can stop them.